Welcome to Chasing Hardware, the podcast that sits down with the sports figures you grew up with and hears their stories. Welcome to Chasing Hardware. I'm your host, Rich Lamello. My guest today will be inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame this year. He's one of three men, along with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to play for all five Laker championship teams in the 80s. And when Larry Bird was asked who he envisioned guarding him when he practiced shooting in the offseason, he said simply, Coop. Always Michael Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Chasing Hardware, Mr. Michael Cooper. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad to have you on. So we'll jump right into it. You're born in LA, and you go to Pasadena High School. I'm assuming you're raised in LA also. Tell me a little bit about, kind of growing up and where the love or the interest in basketball came. Was it, kind of through family, through friends, the neighborhood? Tell me a little bit about how you became, to love basketball.
Well, I grew up in Pasadena
Okay.
and went to Pasadena High School. My family moved out there in the 40s and grew up there. Basketball or sports was part of our family upbringing. My uncles kind of, in my immediate family is my mom and my brother, but we grew up with my grandmother, and she had 10 kids and they had kids. So I grew up in a large family. There was probably like 15, 16 people, 18 people coming to dinner. So when they said, come eat, you came in to eat. You didn't mess around because you weren't going to get much. But so growing up with my family there was like I had 6 or 7 cousins. And so my uncles, to keep us out of the streets and off gangs and all the negative stuff that comes up in your community, ours was sports. So whatever season it was, that's the sport that we played. So my uncles were more familiar and interested in baseball. So that was like really the love. We played that a little bit more than other sports. But when it was basketball season, we played basketball, baseball, football, football. So that's where my love of sports came. I had three uncles, George, Tom, and John. And Tom was the oldest uncle, and we weren't allowed to call him Uncle Tom. We had to call him Tom, our uncle. So he had all the equipment in his car. All my uncles worked at Vaughn's Market.
Sure.
And so when it was baseball season on Saturday, Sundays, we'd go to the park and he'd open his trunk up and we'd have like 15 gloves and baseballs and bats. And then it was basketball. We put up a basketball hoop in our backyard on the garage. And when it was football, he had 2 or 3 footballs because we were always flattening them some kind of way. But so that was my love, and that's what we played. And he kind of geared us more toward baseball. They did because of his love of Jackie Robinson and the Dodgers. And so we played that, like I said, a little bit more. But my fear of baseball was when I went to play and I started grooming myself to play that. And like when I was 12 or 13, went to play Pop Warner, they throwing overhand hardball. And I was a good outfielder. I played left field and I could catch. I was really fast and could catch things and jump. But my fear was batting. So my first time up at bat, we went there and the guy threw an overhand pitch and it hit me in my lead leg, which was my left leg. And it hurt so bad that I dropped the bat, started crying, and I ran home. And my uncle was like, oh, man. So that ended baseball for me. And then one year was football. We were playing football, and I loved to jump. And one of my favorite football players was Paul Warfield from the Cleveland Browns. Jim Kelly, Paul Warfield, the Browns. And I remember we were playing at the park. A guy threw a high pass. I jumped up in the air, and I caught it. The next thing I remember is everybody was laying over top of me saying, Coop, you okay? What, y'all? The guy had took my feet out from underneath me. And my uncle said I turned a whole flip and I hit my head, but I held on to the ball. And I said, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So I kind of hung in with football. So the next week, this is the very next week, we're playing in the streets because we couldn't get into the park. And the guy threw a pass to me and he threw it high and I jumped, but I hit a telephone pole, those big wooden telephone poles back then.
Sure.
That one there kind of like that hurt a little bit more. I hung on to the ball, but I was hurting. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to play football. and next was basketball, and that kind of gravitated toward that. I was again real athletic, run, jump. Wasn't a really good shooter, but I could shoot. But defense was my thing, and that was kind of like my passion. And the funny part about basketball, throughout the career, my NBA career, but I played, I had 3 concussions, 2 broken noses, a bruised sternum, a bruised clavicle, many ankle injuries, just hip pointers that hurt so bad. So, but I love basketball, and that's what I stayed with.
That's amazing. And I have to ask you, so you go to Pasadena High School, and I'm always like kind of, intrigued by, kind of overlaps and things like that. I happen to notice, I have no idea what your musical tastes are, but I happen to notice that 1 year ahead of you is a guitarist named Eddie Van Halen, and 2 years ahead of you is his brother, the drummer Alex Van Halen. Did you have any overlap with those guys in high school, or after high school? Did you guys cross paths?
No overlapping at all. I'd heard about them because they used to play little things around there in the gym and stuff like that. But again, my musical interest at the time was jazz. I grew up loving jazz. So Miles Davis, Coltrane, that was it. But no, and what's funny is that I saw Eddie, but when you look at him back then, both of us are geeky, our teeth are too big, things are going on. Your afro is kind of lopsided because we weren't, it was different. But no, and I really appreciate that. And Pasadena is a very sound and solid and creative place. And look at the people that have come out of Pasadena. Jackie Robinson went to Pasadena City College. So I'm very, very proud of Pasadena High School, the Bulldogs. Let's go, Dogs. And but no, never crossed paths with them. Heard about them, but I didn't know about them until later on when people told me, and then that's when you realize, Coop, you don't remember Eddie, that little skinny guy, tall guy? No, no. Well, he probably don't know Michael Cooper, the little skinny guy, the tall guy over there. So, but never heard of him.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay. And yeah, and then so you're graduate Pasadena High School. You go to, like you said, Pasadena City College for 2 years. And I mean, you talk about a community college with an unbelievable history. As you point out, Jackie Robinson went there, played every sport known to man, to include basketball. Um, and his brother, who people might not realize was an Olympic medalist also, he went there. Darrell Evans, who I think is the first guy in Major League Baseball history to hit 40 home runs in both the American and National League, he was a basketball player there. This is all obviously before your time. And Jerry Tarkanian plays there and coaches there before your time. So, I mean, this is a community college steeped in tradition, and all of those guys tied to basketball. What was your thinking when you enrolled there? Did you want to stay local? Were you hoping for a full ride and it just hadn't come yet? How did you end up at Pasadena City?
Well, go a little bit back to my high school, Coach George Turgeon, who's passed away since then. We used to call him the Hawk. Coach Turgeon had a nose like a hawk, but he was so instrumental in my development of defense and what team is all about. He
Sure.
taught us that team meant together, everyone achieved more. And that was my foundation. He taught us how to play defense, stay down low, move your feet, and keep all that together. And we've had some great teams coming up in 1974. And prior to me going there, they've won CIF and state. Unfortunately, our team wasn't that good, but we did make a mark. And I think that's where my foundation for defense and my love for defense came. So once I was finishing my high school career, I didn't have the grades to go. And I've developed this concept called Coop's 5 Ds. They have determination, dedication, desire, discipline, and decision making. And those 5 Ds help this skinny guy be a good player on the court. But it also helped me because I turned a concept around of being an athlete student. And that's when I realized I had to be a student athlete because I didn't get a lot of, I had a pretty good high school career, but I didn't get a lot of scholarship offers. And one point that you just mentioned, yeah, I wanted to stay close. I got one scholarship offer, and it was from Pacific,
Mhm.
and I didn't know where Pacific was, and Pacific is in Seattle, Washington, small college up there. Seattle Pacific was the name of the school, and I didn't know where that was at. So I said, you know what? That's next thing is junior college, and that happened to be the best step for me because since I became academically ineligible my freshman year, it really made me realize the importance of academics. So going to Pasadena College, I still had the comfort of being close to home, but it allowed me the ability to grow up and be the young man that I'm supposed to be and learn what this thing up here is all about, having a good sound mind, being able to think your way through situations. So going to Pasadena City College was a great transition. I was able to get my studies down, really work on my game. The coach there was Joe Barnes, and Coach Barnes was a chemistry teacher. And I really loved the fact that he was so concerned about academics because he's the one that kept us on, but he still believed in us as athletes. And he allowed us to get better. And that's where I kind of like flourished as an offensive player. So my freshman year, we had a really, really good team. We had a lot of guys that had been to the military that would come back in the junior college. As long as you haven't finished your 4 years, you know, you have what is it, 4 years to do five. Well, these guys, two guys that went to the military, so they came back, so they had 2 years. So we had a really good freshman year, although they were sophomores at junior college. So we won like I think we were like 23-2 or something like that. And then my sophomore year when they left, now I was able to take over and become that offensive player that I became, scoring, being able to dunk the basketball, but still staying into defense. And that's when the scholarships started coming because I didn't forget about being a student athlete. Started getting my grades together, did a very good job with my grades, and I had college offers from to go on to USC, to Arizona State, Arizona, New Mexico, UNLV, Coach Tarkanian's team, those running Rebel teams in the 77, 78 years were very good, and they all came uh, uh, trying to get me to come there. And the reason I chose New Mexico, the University of New Mexico is where I chose to go because Norm Ellenberger was a harder version than my high school coach. Coach Turgeon never cursed, was very, very religious. He turned me on to athletes in action.
Mm.
And so when I go to New Mexico, Ellenberger was like, Coop, you consume this space. He's yelling and he's screaming at me and he's being tenacious and you got to be aggressive. And that's where it all kind of like put together when I went to New Mexico. But my junior college years were so formative for me and instrumental in my success because it gave me a chance to still keep that home life a little bit because
Yeah.
kids have a hard time going from high school when you are from Los Angeles and you're good enough to go to Connecticut. That's 4 years of going there, you know, and you lose that loveliness and comfortability of home. And I was able to keep that and still kind of like branch myself and separate myself on a gradual basis.
Interesting. Yeah. And so, yeah, so you go to New Mexico and this is a program. So you said Norm Ellenberger's the coach. And it's interesting. He's brought in a bunch of community college guys, junior college guys. And I can't help but think that it was like the perfect training ground for you for the Showtime team that you would ultimately join because, you know, he's running a run and gun offense and, you know, kind of quick shots and, you know, fast break and, you know, lots of great passing, but also on defense, it's full press. It's, you know, kind of aggressive man. So you're getting a little bit of that Showtime element on the offensive end, but he's also, you know, a dog on defense. And, you know, it would just, it's exactly how your 12-year career would play out. So it was probably, maybe you didn't know it going in, but it's probably the perfect training ground for you going to LA ultimately.
No, for sure. And it was great because I have never played in front of a crowd. The pit seats 19,000 people. And when,
Yeah.
you know, our first year there, my junior year there, he brought in 8 JUCO All-Americans. Marvin Johnson, Willie Howard, Phil Abney, Russell Saunders. I mean, we were loaded and we struggled to win the first year. I think we were like 17-14, but you could see that we were going to be that team that he wanted us to become. And as you said, it was suited for Showtime. I mean, we got up and down the floor. We played off the altitude. You know, the altitude very high up there. The fans loved us. We just we it was well, he wanted us to pass and shoot, but if you had somebody open to make the extra pass, and that's how the Lakers kind of played, you know, when we finally got there. But it was an exciting season. My senior year, we led the nation. I think we either led the nation in scoring or we came in behind UNLV by 1 point or something like that. But we were very, very fast, dynamic, and aggressive. And it's unfortunate that we didn't go on. We were ranked number 4 in the country in 1978. And it was just some things happened. We played Cal State Fullerton, our first round of the NCAA tournament, and we were favored by 40 against them, and we played them at Tempe in Arizona State. And we just didn't play the kind of basketball that we should have. There were some things that happened behind the scenes. I don't want to talk about it because it hurts me to my heart. But Cal State Fullerton had a guy named Greg Bunch and Michael Anderson and this guy named Kevin Heenan, real skinny white dude with big goggle glasses on, and he had all this hair. And when we saw them, we kind of like we underestimated them a little bit, but there's some things that happened that we got up like 10 on them. We were about to blow up. They kind of, and that team caught their mojo. And when they did, that kid Kevin Heenan, man, he lit us up. Him and this guy named Greg Bunch, and they ended up beating us. Now, Rich, had we been able to get past that game, the next 3 games were in the pit in New Mexico, and we could have gotten to, I believe it was Elite 8. That could have took us to the 8. And my college career was really, really important to me, and it was fun, and it really gave me a chance to grow up and play exciting basketball. But it's still, that's the hard part, because the things we could have went on and done for that school, it hurts, but it was still good.
Yeah.
How I got found was Norm and Jerry West. Jerry West was a Laker coach / general manager for the Lakers, and he was coming down to see this guy named Marvin Johnson. And Marvin could shoot the ball so well, we used to call him automatic because he didn't miss. This guy could shoot, but he was just a catch and shoot shooter. And I remember one game, it was against who were we playing? Utah, University of Utah. No, it was against BYU. I'm sorry, against BYU, and Danny Ainge played at BYU.
Yeah.
And Norm said, you know what, you guys, he told us this at shoot around. Jerry West is coming down. He's coming down to see Marvin. And Marvin, congratulations. You got NBA eyes on you. And never mentioned my name. And I said to myself, hey, if he's coming to see him, let me show out a little bit too. And I had a very good game. And I think that's how I got on the Lakers radar or the NBA radar myself with that particular game. But it was a game we won. It was a big game. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Oh, well, and so first of all, to answer your one question, you said who was the leading scorer that year? You guys were the number 1. UNLV was number 2.
Yeah.
And that was a great era for that whole, kind of whack basketball. And you played home and home with UNLV. They had Reggie Theus, as you mentioned, Ainge. Utah had Tom Chambers and Danny Vrains, 2 guys who would have long NBA careers. Like, that was a great era for that conference and that region. And then, you turn it into, you get drafted in the 3rd round by the Lakers. And it's got to be pretty wild. Here you come into the Lakers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is on the roster. There's no more bigger icon in basketball than that guy. What's it like being drafted and you realize, if I make this team, I'm playing with Kareem?
Well, Rich, I didn't even think I was going to get drafted. And the day of the draft, I was at the park, this little park called Villa Park, where we played at in Pasadena. And I was down there playing during the draft. And I'm down there and I'm having a wonderful game. I think I had like 40 points that game, 50 points, and we're not keeping unofficial scores, but I'm scoring. And I remember my cousin came in, and I knew it was the day of the draft. This is like about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I'm down there playing, and my cousin comes in and goes, Coop, Michael, you got to get home. The Lakers drafted you. I'm like, what? Stop playing, man. And we're playing, no, man, the Lakers drafted you. And some guy that was in the offices at this park, who worked at the park, said, Coop, man, you got drafted. So I run home, I get home, and found out I was the 60th player picked in the 3rd round. On the phone is Jerry West, and he says, hey, come to training camp. Excited about having you here, young man. And I remember going to training camp, and at that time, the Lakers used to have our training camp at Loyola Marymount. And so I walk into that old gym, which is, they have refurbished it now. It's a beautiful gym now. But at that time, those old gym had no air conditioning. They had 2 big fans at the door opening. And I walk in and I see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, guy right there behind me, shooting a sky hook. They had Jamal Wilkes was on the team in his prime. He had just won a championship with Golden State Warriors in '72. But Lakers bring him over, and they had the dynamic Norm Nixon from Duquesne. And Norm was an up-and-coming rising point guard in the league. And so you have Kareem averaging about 28, 30, Jamal Wilkes averaging about 25, 26 a game, and Norm Nixon averaging about 21, 22. I'm going to this team. So that's when my antennas went up and said, you know what? I'm glad that I learned fundamental defense from Coach Turgeon. I'm glad I learned aggressive defense from Norm Ellenberger, because when I got there, Jerry West was the coach, and he was like, "Son, there's not enough balls to go around for you to shoot. I need a defensive player." And I said, "Hey, that's me. That's the suit." So I put it on, and it fitted extremely well.
It fitted extremely well for 12 years. 8 times you're on the all defensive team, which is incredible. And you're defensive player of the year, like in '87. And yeah, perfectly suited for the role. And the next year, and it's always amazing to me how there are just some general managers, or coach general managers, whatever it is, who just have a knack for getting a guy. So the Lakers, with Jerry West is the head coach and then becomes the general manager. He basically swings a deal with the New Orleans Jazz for Gail Goodrich. Now, Gail Goodrich was a very good basketball player, but at this point, he's kind of past his prime. They trade Gail Goodrich to the Jazz for a future number one. The future number one is Magic Johnson. 3 years later, he does the same thing, basically with the Cavs, and gets James Worthy. So at the exact moment that you need that guy, he gets that guy with the number one pick in the draft, which is extraordinary. So Matt, your second year, Magic comes in. So now it's all the guys you've just mentioned and Magic Johnson. What's it like the first time you see him come on the court and his passing ability, and you realize the backcourt's going to be me and him and Nixon? Like, this is going to be incredible.
That was the uniqueness and professionalism and art of Jerry West. His ability to always bring in that player. And my first year with the Lakers, I got hurt. I'm like a rookie. So my first real year is the year Magic Johnson comes in. Dr. Buss purchases the Lakers. And the first thing he says is, "I want this team to be part of Los Angeles. And I want us to be," Dr. Buss's his vision for the Lakers was, he wanted us to entertain the entertainers, because we're in the entertainment capital of the world. Second one, New York is one, and many others, but LA is like the place. So his vision was Jack Nicholson, Diane Cannon, all Denzel Washington, all these actors, when they're not working and entertaining us, they want to be entertained. So they're coming to the forum, and he wants us to entertain them. And that was his vision. And boy, you couldn't have any better orchestrator, any better lead actor than Magic Johnson. And I mean, it was fabulous. It was Magic was like playing with your brothers, my cousins. We used to go around to other neighborhoods. There was 5 of us, and we'd go over 3 or 4 blocks away, or we would come to LA, and we would get next up on the court. And we knew each other so well, we didn't have to say, cut, man, back screen. No, we just knew what to do. And it was so comfortable and fun and fantastic to play. That's what Magic brought. Now, granted, my first year, I'm injured, and we're watching this kid from Michigan State play this kid from Indiana State, and we're watching them on TV, and it was probably one of the greatest college games ever by an individual. And the next thing you know, he's walking into the gym at Loyola Marymount. So in reality, I'm a rookie too. And Magic goes, it was myself and Magic were the only, and the guy named Ron Carter were the only 3 rookies that came into camp. And we had guys like Jim Price, Ron Boone, Lou Hudson, the great late Lou. We had some vets that could play this game, but like you said, they were at the end of their career. So with Kareem, Jamal, Magic, and that bunch of guys that they had there, Magic would be like, we would go down to Palm Springs and have training camp. And we stayed at Dr. Buster's place, and Magic would go like, "Coop, you know what? And this is no joke. We used to talk about this every morning at breakfast." And he'd go, "You know what, Coop? Man, I'm going to blow this place up." And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay, that was college now. But, I still believe in the skills. The first day at practice, Magic was doing his thing. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm doing my thing on defense. And the Lakers is about showtime. That's when we want to get up in showtime. And Magic goes, "Coop, you know what? At Michigan State, I had a guy named Greg Kelser. And I remember him used to go and throw a no-look lob pass to Kelser, and Kelser would dunk it. He go, "Coop, we got to get you part of the offense. So remember, if you on that wing and you see you can go, just go. I'm going to get it to you." And at first, I didn't believe him, because I was, he's not my cousin, so I don't really know what he's going to do. And first time I broke, and what it is, he threw it straight to me. And I said, "I thought you were going to throw in the air." He said, "Coop, I had to get you in the flow." And after that, nothing came straight to me. Everything was always over the top. So playing with Magic, man, was like something special. He was the key point of a young man that could do those type of things. How and it takes a rookie player sometimes a year or two to transition from college to the pros. It took Magic Johnson just training camp because we knew after training camp that it was going to be on. And I had 12 fantastic years with him, played all my years with him, won all my championships with him, and it was real special.
Yeah, it's amazing watching that team come along. And the first year that you guys make it to the finals, you're playing Philadelphia, and you're already in that role of kind of the shutdown defender. And I'm curious, when you're playing Philadelphia, are you more on Dr. J? Are you on Andrew Toney? Any of the above? Like, you're starting to draw the other team's top shooter at the 2 or 3 spot. Whenever you guys were facing Philly, who were you going up against?
Well, I kind of moved around from Maurice Cheeks to Tony to Dr. J. I even actually played Bobby Jones, and Bobby Jones was 6'9", 6'10" out of North Carolina. A great role player, kind of similar to me, but a bigger
Yeah.
version. So it was pretty much who was hot. But most of my time in 1980, I drew Maurice Cheeks, and then with Andrew Toney. But they also had Lionel Hollins, and Lionel
Mm.
Hollins was a good shooter. Had won a championship in Portland up there, but now he's with the Sixers. So those games were so much fun because at that time we were playing in the 80s. We really weren't talking about winning a championship. We just wanted to be competitive because you got to remember in 1979, the great Seattle Supersonics had won a championship.
Right.
uh, Jack Sigma, late great Dennis Johnson, Gus Williams. They were the cream of the crop, and we had beat them to get the privilege to play the Sixers. So we were just playing, having fun, and doing whatever we were doing, and found ourselves playing against probably one of the most talented Eastern teams, other than the Celtics and the Detroit Pistons. But the Boston, I mean, Philly was the team to beat with the team that they had. Daryl Dawkins, Dr. J. I mean, they had it all up there. Eventually, they got Moses Malone. But that 1980 year, I was just guarding whoever got hot. And Coach Westhead was our coach, and he was like, Coop, you got him. And then Coop said, during the game, Maurice Cheeks get hot. Norm would sub out. Coop, I want a bigger body on Maurice Cheeks. So I was moving around a lot, but I ended up guarding Doc the most during that series.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So you guys win the final, and I have to ask the question. Kareem gets hurt. I think it was in Game 5. So famously in Game 6, Magic Johnson, the point guard, granted a 6'9" point guard, but nevertheless the point guard, jump center. He plays in the pivot. You guys win. He scores at 40 points or something like that. What's that like in the locker room where you're like, wait a second, we're going into the clinching, what could be the clinching game without arguably one of the 2 or 3 best players of all time, and we're putting our point guard at center. What's the thinking in the locker room? Or was it like, yeah, we got this?
Well, I'm gonna take you back to before we even went to Philly. Kareem gets hurt in the game at the Forum in the 5th game, and we're leaving, and we find out that night that Kareem's ankle not too bad, but they didn't want to risk it. They wanted to get him as much rest as he could, so they were gonna give him 2 or 3 days to rest. We're up one, we're up 4-1. I mean 3-1 going to Philadelphia. And I remember leaving that morning, and unlike they do today, and they're chartering flights, we had to go through domestic airlines. We usually flew American when we went there. So we're all at the airport. Fans are coming around and saying, wishing us well and stuff like that. So we get on the plane, and everybody's kind of like real solemn, and nobody's saying anything because we knew Kareem was going to be on the trip. So we had 2 games. Okay, we can go to Philadelphia, play as hard as we could. If we lose, we have to come back to LA and play for a 7th game. So we're sitting on the plane, and usually the first seat when you walk in the plane in first class and you make that right, that seat was always reserved for Kareem because he had leg space.
Mm.
Magic and I usually sat right behind him in first class. So everybody's on the plane, and this is unlike the day that now that you have it. You used to walk from your car getting dropped off at the front. You used to walk straight to the gate, and we're all sitting there, and it's probably about 10 minutes before we're going to leave, and no Magic. We don't see Magic. And everybody's like, hey, Coop, you see Magic? I haven't seen the guy. Everybody, and we're just sitting there, and everybody's real quiet. And all of a sudden, you hear Frankie Beverly and Mays. And Frankie Beverly is a singer that just passed away last week.
Hmm.
And that's Magic's favorite group, Frankie Beverly and Mays. And we hear this song, Golden Time of Day. And we hear it, and we hear it gets louder and louder coming down, and all of a sudden he gets on, and Magic has a boom box on his shoulder. That's the golden time of day, Frankie Bell. He goes, "What's wrong with you guys?" And everybody's looking at him, and he says, "Have no fear. Magic Johnson's here." And he broke the mold, and he turned and he sat in Kareem's seat. And we knew it was on then. And we have a fun ride to Philadelphia. Coach Westhead is laughing, and Coach Riley is an assistant. We're laughing, and we're going. We get to Philadelphia. Nobody's concerned. We have a good practice. We go to shoot around that day. We come back for the game, and we go in there and we break. And Jim Jones was our tallest guy then, Big Jim Jones. And we're sitting there, and we go out to the huddle. We have warm-ups. We're getting ready to go out to the huddle for the jump ball. And Magic goes, "Coach, I'm going to jump center." Everybody's like, "What?" He said, "No, Coach, I got it." And I really do believe, and I've talked to him since then, but at that time, Magic hadn't told us that. He knew that that was going to be the mental game. And when he walked out to center and stood at center, and Daryl Dawkins is there in the middle at Caldwell Jones, and Magic walks up to jump, and they thought it was a joke. And it was like, no, Magic stayed in there. And we had them. We had them right there. The ball goes up. Magic jumps as high as he could, which wasn't real high. He jumped as high as he could. He didn't get the tip. Philly got the tip, but we had thrown him off. And that whole game, as you said, Magic had probably the best game a rookie has ever had. 42 points, 15 rebounds, 16 assists, like 8 or 9 steals in that game. And he led us to a championship. And that was the first time from that point on that we ever started talking about championships. We won, and nobody said, "Hey, y'all, let's go out here." We were just going out here to compete because we didn't think we really had a chance, but we were going to play as hard as we could. We won the championship, and after that night in the locker room, we were all happy and everything. And Magic goes, "We're going to win some more. Let's go." And that's where the word "showtime." Y'all listen, anytime we get in a drought or we on the road somewhere and things aren't going well, and somebody, it usually was Magic, would yell, "Let's go, you guys, it's showtime." We knew to turn on the juices and let things start flowing.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. And you alluded to something a second ago. You mentioned Coach Paul Westhead. It's crazy. You come in, Jerry West, obviously legend. He is the logo for the NBA. He's your head coach. He moves upstairs. They bring in Jack McKinney, who is in like a life-threatening bike accident the first month he's the head coach. And Paul Westhead takes over. And then that first year, that second year, that year, Westhead wins the title. And then he's coached for another year. And then he and Magic, well, I mean, there's, all kinds of stories about it, but he and Magic, have words in the locker room, and all of a sudden he's out, and in comes Pat Riley, who Riley has been a solid Laker player for a long time, then an announcer. And then all of a sudden he's kind of at the last minute brought in as the assistant coach. And now, boom, he's the head coach. What's that like at first when this guy comes in? You're like, wait a second, what? When all of a sudden Riley the next year is the head coach.
Well, you know what? Coach Riley was something special. And I still say this to this day. You mentioned Coach McKinney. Jack McKinney was a disciple of Jack Ramsey up at Portland when they won with the team 72, I believe. No, 70. When
77.
Portland won the championship with Bill Walton, Jack Ramsey was an assistant coach. And he brought that same mentality of winning to Los Angeles. And it is so unfortunate that this man didn't get a chance to really, really guide us, but he has set the groundwork for what we were going to be like. And I always tell people that if Coach Jack McKinney had not gotten hurt, you would never have heard of Pat Riley. You never would have heard of him because he would have been our coach through that whole run. But, again, you can say things aligned the way they did, but fortunately, unfortunately, they did. And Pat Riley came on, and I think Pat Riley was the best suitor to take us to where we were supposed to go. He had the looks, the wavy black hair, the nice suits, the stare, the Pat Riley stare. The one thing that Coach Riley gave us, and I use in our lives, a lot of guys, we've talked about this over the years, Pat Riley was a big attention to detail. He wanted the I's dotted, the T's crossed. Practice went this way. Scouting reports, everything was so perfect and geared for us to have the kind of run we had in the 80s. And, unfortunately for Westhead, it didn't work out. think the way that things did. But Coach Riley took us, man, he took us to not another level, to 3 or 4 different levels. And Coach Riley was really significant in the things that we did. He was the reason why we were able to beat Boston Celtics in 1987 when we did, because after losing to them in 86, he said some things, man, to us in the after the game when we had lost the game. Listen, we'll never ever go down like this, and he made us believe it. And being a former player on the 72 championship team with the Lakers, we had to believe him because he's the only one in there in that locker room. We had won 80 and 82, but we had never beat the Celtics. And there was a mindset that you had to have in order to beat Boston. And Pat Riley gave us that, and that catapulted us to be the first team in 16 years prior to the Boston Celtics, first team to go back to back. We won in 87, and he challenged us in 88, and we came back and won it. And that was the magicalness, the specialness of Coach Riley.
Yeah. And it's amazing. We were talking earlier about how, kind of Jerry West, the trades and the drafts he made, the draft picks he had that, kind of put your team together. Same thing is happening on the other coast, right? Red Auerbach is, kind of doing his magic, and he's drafting Larry Bird a year before he's coming out of Indiana State, so he's kind of sequestered him away basically. And he, trades for, in one trade, he gets rid of Joe Barry Carroll and he brings in Robert Parrish and the pick that would become Kevin McHale. So he's building his own dynasty on the other coast. So you guys are getting set up as, to square off again, just like it had been in the 60s and the early 70s. And the one thing, you just touched on it, the one thing the Lakers had never done was knocked off the Celtics. And then in 84, they knock you off. Great series, 7 games. It's like 1,000 degrees in the Garden, and they knock you guys off. And yeah, Riley, kind of challenges you guys. What was that like for the team? I mean, obviously none of you had been part of those teams with West and Elgin Baylor, but what was that like? Are you guys sitting there saying, that was then, this is now? Or were you guys thinking, what does this franchise have to do to overtake these guys?
No, we were thinking, what did this franchise have to do? But Rich, no, I remember those teams. I grew up watching those teams lose to the Celtics, and Don Nelson shooting the ball, hitting the back of the rim, and going about 4 feet above the rim, and coming down, and the look on Jerry West's face. And so I was familiar with that. I lived and died with those 70s, all the 70s and 60s of championships that the Lakers couldn't win against the Celtics. So for us to break through, and as you said, Pat Riley in 1984, we lose to Boston, and then Riles challenges us, and we come back and we beat them in 1985. It was a special moment for us. But you mentioned something, Rich, that I really like to talk about a little bit, is Jerry West's geniusness of not going out and changing 2 or 3 players. Jerry had that ability to get us that one guy. First, it was Magic. First, it was James Worthy. As we're going, then he pulls off the trade for Byron Scott for Norm Nixon. Then we starting to need a little something. So Riles moves Kurt Rambis from the end of the bench and starts him. And everybody's like, why is he starting him? Because Kurt did something real special. You know what he did? He was tough on defense. He rebounded the ball, but he got the ball out of bounds faster than anybody could. Because that was the success of our transition game, was Kurt, the team scores, Kurt would get that ball out in the Magic's hand in less than a second, 2 seconds, and we're off and running. So that made us quite unique. Now, Kurt Rambis is getting a little older. And what does he do? He goes and finds AC Green up at Oregon State that nobody knew anything about. You kind of knew AC was a banger, but he was an undersized big coming into, but he fit well for what we needed. Get the ball out and go. So Jerry was always able to find that player that would come in and enhance us even more. What does he do? He goes to Portland. We needed to beat Boston Celtics. Who's he go get? Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson knew what's his name, Kevin McHale, better than anybody. Played with him at Minnesota, and so he knew how to guard him. He goes and gets Michael Thompson to come in to bang. And what does that do? That changes the game, because Michael knew exactly how to play Kevin McHale. Michael had a high basketball IQ, and he wanted to fit within a team. So Jerry West's ability to find that player, find that player, Kobe Bryant. Find that player, Nick Van Exel. Find that player, Shaq. He was able to do those things. So the coach, all you had to do was put your program together and get your philosophy together on how you want to win. And that's what it was all about. But Pat Riley was really, really instrumental in that. And everybody he brought in was a great, perfect piece. It wasn't a piece that we had to kind of like shave off the edges to make it fit to the puzzle. It was a perfect piece to the puzzle already. So it was
Right.
fun.
Yeah. And it's interesting looking at like your guys' record. I mean, the number of series you won over your career is astounding, but there's a lot of 4-0s and 4-1s. And I would never say that it was easy, but like, there are a lot of 4-1s in there. And then in 88, when Riley has said we're going to go back to back, which throws down the challenge for the team, right? You guys are probably like, great. He says that all of a sudden in that postseason, you guys have 3 straight 7-game series, and this is after an 82-game series. I'm sorry, an 82-game season. That's a grueling postseason. And oh, by the way, and I was thinking about this the entire time watching all your highlight reels. You're 170 pounds, right? I mean, you're 170 pounds, and this is an
175, Rich. Give me my 5 pounds.
Okay. Well, generously, we'll give you 5 pounds, 175. This is in a very physical era. This is Mahorn and Lambier, and like every guy you're going up against is dramatically heavier than you. And obviously, you've got speed and you're tenacious and all that stuff. But what's it like? I mean, 175 pounds. What's it like being 175 pounds and
Well,
playing these the other
I
night?
tell people, yes, I was light, but it allowed me to get around those picks. People were trying to set picks on me, and you couldn't move, so I was able to slim by and get through those crevices that no a guy 200 pounds couldn't get through. So, but you know what? It was just about being very, very tough minded. Wanted to be in the league. People used to tell me I'd never be able to make it, and here I am there. So now I'm going to do everything I could. I was wiry strong. I mean, it didn't really show, but I mean, there was times I took some good hits, but you got to get up and keep on moving. So for me, it was just about being tough back then. And again, we were built for that because you got to look at Jamal Wilkes was probably about as big as I was. Jamal might have been 185, but we had that real thin build. Kareem wasn't a big guy, but he was a very strong guy. So I honestly believe that the basketball guys aligned all these pieces to come together with the help of Jerry West and Dr. Buss, putting it together to that's the team that we were. And the one thing that you mentioned that we had 3 7-game series because we made the league aware in order to beat us, you're gonna have to bring your A game. And the one thing I was very happy about that 88-7 season is that 88, everybody, every game brought their A game. And we were able to overcome that to take those games to 7. And one thing Pat Riley said is, hey, you got to have the best record in the league. Because if you're going to play that 7th game, I want to be at our place at the Forum. And that's what we did. So we went out and we played hard during the regular season, 82 games. The nights you want to take off, we didn't take those nights off. We were going to Denver and knew Denver was going to play us hard. We had to go there and win. We were going down to Phoenix Suns. Phoenix, a very good team, and had some great teams down there. Those teams that you're supposed to beat, we beat them that year. And that was why all those 7 games against Utah and whoever else it was always played at the Forum where we had the advantage as far as being in front of our home crowd, sleeping in our own bed, and knowing that familiarity of the arena that we were going to play in.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, it's just some so the first time you guys faced the Celtics, you played the Celtics 3 times in the finals. You lose that first one in 7, and then you win the next 2. So in your career, you had the edge on them in overall championship series 1. And obviously and the legendary matchup, I mentioned it at the top of the show with you and Larry Bird. Tell me a little bit about that, because the stories about him are legendary, about trash talking. But I heard you say one time that with you, there wasn't a lot of trash talk necessarily. I think there was a mutual respect, but he did trash talk you one time. And it was a really funny story about you and Kareem, like both going out on him, and he laces a pass between you two. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I do. I mean, again, Larry famous for that. One of
Yeah.
the things he used to do is that they would put Larry on me, and this is before I was shooting the ball the way I was shooting it at the end. But as soon as the ball touched my hand, he would get up on me and then he'd back up. He said, shoot it. And he knew I was kind of hesitant to shoot because we wanted to get the ball in the cream. So he would drop, or Magic or Worthy would drop right into their lap and make it unavailable for me to get it in there. So I'd either swing it or I had to take a shot and I would miss it. So this one particular thing is after we started getting our mojo on them, Larry knew that trash talking wasn't going to affect me or any of us. So, but this one time he comes down and we're underneath the basket, and Robert Parrish is on this side, and he's gonna come off that little screen, and he goes, "I'm getting ready to wear your ass out." So I get in my best defensive stance. I'm going down. Parrish sets the screen. Larry comes off. I get through it. But as he comes off, DJ hits him right in stride at the elbow, right by the free throw line. And Larry gets the ball and goes up. And Kareem steps out. And I'm like, okay, I got this shit. So I go up to block his shot. I don't know how this guy, because I had both my hands up. Kareem had it. I don't know how he got this ball, but he had a great pass to Robert Parrish, and it was a pick and roll. And Robert gets it and dunks the ball. And he goes, "I told you, MF." And he runs down the floor. And that stung, because you know what? The guy got it done. And
Right.
usually think wearing me out is somebody gonna give you a great move and go up and hit a shot in your face. That was the greatness of Larry Bird. It wasn't about always hitting the shot. It was about jumping out of bounds, saving a basketball and throwing it in, like he did against the Pistons when he stole the ball and Johnny Moses goes, "Larry Bird steals the ball," and he throws it in DJ, and DJ scores. In some kind of way, they beat the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. Or it was Larry setting a good back pick on somebody, one of his teammates, Cornbread or Parrish or McHale, and them going up under the basket to receive a pass for a score. And that's what Larry Bird was all about. And you know what? He has said that I'm the toughest player he's ever had to go against. And I'll say that I said this before him. Larry Bird was the toughest player I ever had to guard, simply for that reason, because usually I guarded a young Michael Jordan, 84, 85, and Michael was at his youth and at his best. And George Gervin, Andrew Toney, you mentioned Dr. J, and just to name a few. We're not even talking about the guys on the East Coast, but those guys, when they throw the ball, they have a tendency to, okay, let me just stand here and watch and see what's going on. When Larry gave the ball up is when he became more dangerous, because he was going to do something to affect the outcome on the team. Back pick, get a pass and throw it in for a pass, or he was going to score, but he was going to always be effective on the offensive end. And to me, that kept me busy the whole time. Usually when them guys pass, okay, I'll take a break right now and breathe and see what's going on. No, Larry had to pay attention. If he wasn't going to score, he's going to push me up under the basket and try to get offensive rebounds. So he's one of the best, and I've always admired him. And you know, I never tried to play him dirty. I didn't try to be physical, hitting with elbows or cheap shot him or anything like that. And I like to think that that's why he said that I was one of the best players, because it was just about honest, hard, competitive basketball he and I played, and it wasn't about being physical and playing him like the way the Pistons used to play him or the Atlanta Hawks used to play him, rough him up and throw him down. It wasn't about that. It was about playing him to the best and coming out on top at the end.
Yeah. And it's not like he just kind of mentioned it in some interview one time. I mean, at his retirement ceremony, he's up there, kind of talking about his, whatever it was, 15-year career and the championships and all that stuff. And somebody says to him, toughest guy you played against. And he goes off for like 5 minutes at his retirement ceremony, his retirement press conference, talking about you and, just talking about.
Stop, Rich. You're going to make me cry. Stop. That's great, man.
Yeah, it's the ultimate testimony, right?
Yeah,
testimony.
I mean that's what we play this game about. You play this game for the competitive nature, and you always want to get the best of someone, but not in that egotistical way. I bested you. No, you want to get the best of them because you consider yourself one of the best. And that's what this game is all about.
Yeah. And I do have to ask, because I've seen you just mentioned a bunch of the guys, Andrew Toney. Damn, it's just like the basketball world got robbed because of his injuries, because that guy was just automatic. When in those handful of years before he started to have the leg issues. But one guy I've seen you mention, in addition to the George Gervins and the Dr. J's and obviously Larry, is Mike Mitchell. And I grew up, part of my growing up was in Cleveland, and those were some bad teams. I mean, when you have an owner who is told by the league he can't make any trades without league permission, you have a bad team. And that was Ted Stepien and the Cavs. But the one bright light for a couple of years there was Mike Mitchell. And I've heard you talk about him. Tell me a little bit about, guarding Mike Mitchell, because that guy could score.
Mike Mitchell was a unique individual, probably about 6'7", 6'8", and just really, really tough. Had a weird, awkward shot it way up high over his head. He didn't care if you got up on him because he was going to hit a shot, but he was so deceptive and creative in shooting the basketball. And you played a great San Antonio team with Artis Gilmore, which they called the A Train. They were going to ride the A Train to the Western Conference Championship. That's A Train, Artis Gilmore, George Gervin. But the person you had to stop the most was Mike Mitchell. You had Johnny Moore, some other people, but Mike Mitchell was that second or third scorer that could go get 35, 40 a night. And I want to jump back a little bit, Rich, and because Mike was dynamic in his own, but I agree with you about Andrew Toney. That young man never really got his true due because of that injury. He tore his Achilles heel, and he sat out a year or two, but he was never the player. Andrew Toney was so good, they nicknamed him the Boston Strangler because DJ and I used to talk about this. Man, this fucking guy can play. And Andrew was 6'4", strong, competitive, would get in your face. And he had a weird, unique shot too. But he wasn't afraid of you blocking the shot because then he had you. He reminds me a little bit of Vinnie Johnson from the Detroit Pistons, the microwave. Vinny, and that's what I tell my son and kids in today's game. Don't be afraid to get your first shot blocked. Sometimes I really do believe players in our era used to want you to block that first shot because when you block that first shot, they got you for the whole game because they're gonna pump fake, they're gonna give you a bunch of stuff. And Andrew Toney was like that. But you said it, Rich. Andrew Toney, Mike Mitchell, you're not even talking about the late great Walter Davis. I mean, these guys were some dynamic scorers. But David Thompson, people forget about him. They some dynamic scorers that we played in the 80s, and we had some tough teams, man. And basketball, you know what? They talk about how physical our game was. Still, our game was artistic, creative, and it was beautiful when you saw two good teams playing basketball. Yeah, it got physical because that's what basketball is sometimes, but it still was a game to be enjoyed and to be admired.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, so the ultimate honor is going to be bestowed on you in the next couple of weeks. You're going to the Hall of Fame. Tell me about that when you received that call, what your thought process was.
Well, that call came on April Fool's Day, April 1st. So when I got it, I'm sitting on the thing, and I had gotten that call 2 years before that. And Mr. Colangelo, who is as part of the process of letting players know whether you made it or you didn't make it, and I was tired of hearing, Coop, not this year. It was really hard for us to make the decisions and stuff like that. So I'm sitting on my couch. I get the call. I actually had forgotten about the call because they called me the night before and told me, hey, call's gonna come at 9 o'clock between 9 and 11, no, 9 and 10:30 on the West Coast. So I'm watching TV in the morning and stuff, and the call comes, and my wife goes, oh, it's the Hall, babe. So I'm sitting there, I put the phone on speaker, and I'm sitting there and I'm just waiting, and they're going, hey, Mr. Cooper, how you doing? Michael and Jerry's going, Coop, how you doing, man? Nice to talk to you. And so I kind of like spazzed out for a minute. I was just kind of watching TV and had the phone here, and it goes, Coop, congratulations. You made it in. And I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting there. My wife goes, she's sitting next to me. She goes, babe, you got in. So I'm saying, listen, if this is a April Fool's joke, this is very, very rude of you guys like that. And Jerry starts laughing. He goes, Coop, no, it's not no joke, man. You got in. Congratulations. And I just remember jumping up and down. And probably, other than winning the championship, I've always played the game of basketball. And I'm pretty sure most 99.99% of athletes would say they play this game for the love of the game, because you have a very special gift and you're in a small percentage of players that can get to the NBA and have a long career and play and be successful. And you always play not for individual awards or accolades, but you know what? Sometimes hard work pays off. And I've always worked hard in my game. I've worked hard in playing defense, and I've worked hard in being a good teammate. And when you work hard, good things happen for you. So for my footprints to even be mentioned in the last 3 or 4 years prior to this year getting this call, for my footprints to be at the doorstep and for them to be saying, hey, Coop, knock because it might open, and you get denied and you got to turn around and come back, or your footprints stay there. And now for me to knock on that door and for them to say, hey, Coop, come on in. That's the greatest thing that you could ever have, and it's an award I'm very proud of. But the one award that's getting ready to happen even after the Hall of Fame, January the 13th, is the Lakers are going to retire my jersey. And that is something that is really, really special. You know, as a husband and wife, and you have kids, and you know, when you have that first child and you see that first child, and that's your child's part of you, your blood is running in them, that is real special. And it's hard to beat that feeling in that moment. But when when the Lakers are retiring my jersey, along with the Hall of Fame, I mean, it's kind of like Coop's year, you know, that is going to be special. But the Hall comes first. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't thought about it a lot, but as we get closer, I'm starting to get nervous. I have my speech written, and this, you know, they're giving you like 20 minutes, 15 minutes to say your speech. And they're like, Coop, please try to keep it in, because there's been some people in the past that went 25 minutes and they go on. And listen, I only want to be up there 5 or 6 minutes. I know I got a lot. I want to thank a lot of people, because there's so many people influential in my career and in my life. They said, no, 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 Coop, you got to mention those. But just so I've scaled my speech down, and this is going to be good, I think.
That's awesome. Who are the presenters?
Keeping that a secret.
Okay, fair enough. And no, I totally get that. And so it's always so entertaining watching, because I love the notion of the multiple presenters. I think that's a very cool image to see a couple guys up there with you. Um,
Well, I have 5 people up there.
oh, do you have five? Oh, wow. Okay.
So
That's awesome. Well, we'll have to watch to see who it is.
yeah.
I have to ask one question. When your Lakers run ended, you went to Italy, and this is in like 1990. This is before like a lot of U.S. players go over. But you had played with Bob McAdoo for a bunch of years. He had played like a very specific role for you guys, and then he ultimately went over to Italy and was one of the first American stars to really make an impact in Europe. And you went for a year. And I'm just curious, what was that experience like for you playing over in Italy, in Rome?
You know, you play basketball for different reasons, and my George Coach Turser used to tell me, you know what, Coop, if you be good to this game and be true to this game, basketball will take you around the world. And here I was playing basketball in America, in the best league ever, the NBA. And now I finished my career, and I'm really not really ready to finish. And my agent calls me and says, Coop, the team that Danny Ferry and Brian Shaw, which was called Il Messaggero in Rome, Brian and Danny were coming back, and they were looking for 2 Americans. And they were like, Coop, they heard that you're not going back to the NBA, and they wanted you to go play. And I thought about it for a minute, and then my agent goes, Coop, you'd be a fool not to, because they were paying me a lot of money too. And they like, Coop, go. And I said, you know what? Fine, let's go. So I took my whole family over there, and we lived in Rome, and probably one of the best times I had playing basketball. I'm living in a foreign country. I'm living in probably one of the most innovative and creative and historically biblical countries you could be in. So much has happened in the Bible in Rome. I had a great time. Food was wonderful, different style of living, had a great team. My other American on my team was Dino Raja, uh,
Sure.
a Boston Celtic. I'm rooming with this guy, being a Laker, but we kept it civil between each other. But it was wonderful, man. Had the coach Valerio Bianchini, kind of reminded me a little bit of a shorter version of Pat Riley. Coach Bianchini was probably about maybe 5'8", 5'9". You know, Riles is 6'4", six. You know, the real. But it was a wonderful time I had. I stayed the entire time. I didn't go in for a month or two, then come back. I told him I was going to come and stay the whole time, so I got to experience truly 4 seasons, because I had never been in that kind of environment. Being in LA, it's like 2 seasons. It's hot or a little rainy. So being here, being over there, I got to experience winter, spring, summer, and fall. Had a wonderful teammate, had a great time, learned a little bit of Italian, and it was spectacular basketball for me. Truly enjoyed it.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I have two questions I have to ask you. Do you have time for two questions for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. One of them is, so then you come back from Italy and you do some work in the front office with Jerry West. You're an assistant when Magic is the coach, and then Del Harris. And then you've coached at like every different level. You've coached in the NBA, the WNBA. You won 2 titles with the LA Sparks and Lisa Leslie. You've coached in college. You coached the USC women. You coached in the D League. You won a championship back where you went to college in Albuquerque. Tell me a little bit about your coaching experience. Again, coaching at every different level, men, women, high school kids, everything in between. Tell me a little bit about what you've taken away from your coaching experiences.
Pat Riley really prepared us for truly life after basketball because again, there is a time that LeBron James is going to retire. It doesn't look like anytime soon, but the great ones are going to retire. Mine happened a little bit sooner. His, I played 12 years, so I knew that I want to stay connected to basketball in some kind of way. But the creative part in my mind is, you know what? I want to experience basketball at all levels, and being a player at the NBA level. Then going to coaching with Coach Dale Harris and learning the different ways of coaching, being under Jerry West as a special assistant to the general manager and watching him, how he went about preparing himself to draft players. One of the things Jerry taught me is like, Coop, when you go look at these super teams, the Connecticut's, the UConns, the North Carolinas, all those great teams, he says most of the time, and 80% of the time, 90% of the time, the Lakers are picking last. So you don't go and look at the starting five. You don't look at those players. You look at the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 player, because that's usually going to be your player. You go and watch them in practice. You watch film on them. You watch them when they get in the game. You watch them when they come out of the game. How they're going to act when they're coming out. If they're having a great game and they come out of the game, are they going to come back sulking and being that? If they're not having a good game, what are they looking like over there? And that was the one thing I really learned from Jerry on how to select a player. And I have taken that not just for the pro game, but for any aspect of the game in WNBA, in high school and college. When you're recruiting kids in high school and college, you look at those type of kids. You go see these super teams, in the AAU tournaments. I'm not looking at the top 5 kids because they're probably committed somewhere else. But I'm looking at that 7, 8, 9, 10 kid that's getting in, because usually that's your kid. Now that kid may not gonna get you 30 or 40 points, but he's gonna help your team win a championship because he's gonna do all the things necessary. He'll set good picks. He'll be at practice on time. He'll leave late. He'll be interested in wanting to get better. So for me, coaching is always about giving back to the game. From the player development standpoint, when I got with the Los Angeles Sparks in the WNBA, that league was just starting to grow. And we were able to break through that Houston Comets team with Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, and Tina Thompson. We broke through that with that young lady that's right here right here, Lisa Leslie and Candace Parker, winning a championship with them and helping that league grow and get better, because it's about player development. If the players are better, the league is going to get better, because if the players get better, fans are going to be attracted to it. And look at the WNBA now in their 27th season and only getting bigger and better with that brand. Going to college now, I'm coaching at Cal State LA, a Division II school, helping Coach Jim Sy there. Coach Mason Holly, we're all putting together a good team. We went 24-7 last year. First time they had ever won plus 24 games in a long time for that league. So giving back, high school, coached at Culver City High School and at Chadwick, took some of my worst losses, but it was still enjoyable because I felt I was giving the kids something that they could hang their hats on. And if they pursued athleticism afterwards, then that was fine. But still, the things that you teach and learn through basketball, you can take that into other aspects of your life, in the business life, the religious life, and your family life. And that's one thing that I enjoy and I continue to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And then the last thing I have to ask you, we've obviously talked about the guys who, were the biggest challenges to cover. I'm also curious. I mean, obviously your reputation is as one of the great defenders of all time. Who were the defenders you looked at and watched, either growing up or while you were playing or even today? Who are some of the guys you look at and go, damn, that guy's
you know what?
tough.
My uncle, he was a Boston Celtics fan.
Okay.
And he used to sit me down on a little black and white TV in the 60s and 70s, early 70s. He said, hey, listen, look at this team here. So the people I grew up watching was Zach Sanders,
Sure.
John Havlicek, Chet Walker, guys like that played the total game. And I kind of patterned my game after John Havlicek because he was called a sixth man, the ultimate sixth man. And he did everything. He was a good passer. He's a good free throw shooter. He was a good rebounder, good defender, a good teammate, ran the floor hard. They used to call him the third lung player because it looked like he just would run all day without getting tired. So I patterned my game after some of those greats right there. And then looking at players like Elgin Baylor, that flashy style. Connie Hawkins was big for me. The one guy that could hold the ball with one hand and played with the Phoenix Suns. And so those are some of the people that I kind of follow, but it was all about team. It's always been about team to me. And I've always played for some very good basketball teams and teams that were individuals for a moment, but soon we became a team. And when you become a team, great things happen for teams. So those are some of the people that I patterned my game after, and it's been successful for me.
Yeah, it certainly has. 5 titles in a decade, plus numerous other titles, coaching and college and et cetera. Well, Michael, I have to tell you, this has been awesome. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time, but also, hearing all the stories about, kind of growing up in LA and the community college years in New Mexico, and obviously the Showtime years are just, phenomenal. It's been awesome having you on Chasing Hardware. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. I'll talk to you.
And thank you for listening to Chasing Hardware. I've been your host, Rich Lumello. The Michael Stanley Band brought us in, and the Suburbs with Life is Like are going to take us out. Speak to you next time.
Tonight, it feels like life. Come on. Life is like. Life is like. Life is like what it is.